So today we're working on my shaft. No, not that kind of shaft. This shaft, my steering intermediate shaft. Let's go. Welcome to part number 23 of Project 308. My name is Lou Trottier. Hang on.
Enough already of the goofy shenanigans. Let's get to work. This car isn't gonna fix itself. First up is this steering wheel extender. My new buddy Jack from number 27 recommended this adapter. Well, truth be said, we're not really buddies. I sent him a message and he answered me. But make sure you check out his channel. He's a really cool dude. This $544 Canadian box of parts represents enough pieces to finish my steering knuckle repair and put everything back together. Yeah, keep looking, Lou, but that's all there is.
All right, here's our subject of today, this lovely, beautiful steering column. That is supposed to be black. I don't really know how I'm going to make that black again. Gonna take the brackets off real quick, give it a good clean. I might try and separate the upper knuckle, the upper U-joint there. We'll see how easily it comes apart. Let's get started.
Here I am marking the shaft and the joint, thinking I'm actually going to get this thing apart. It ain't coming apart, as you're going to find out in a second.
Separating that upper universal joint on the steering column is going to be a lot more effort than it would be worth. So I'm just going to leave it there and clean it. There's nothing wrong with it. And I don't want to make work for myself.
About 2 months ago, I made a decision, that I was going to make one video a week. You know how life is. The moment those words came out of my mouth, I turned my back, and then I lost a technician.
Interesting. That's loose. Huh. All right.
So that means Lou, that's me, has to go fix cars again. And if I'm stuck fixing customer cars all day long, Project 308 doesn't get any work done on it. And for me, that really sucks. But my question is, did you miss me enough to subscribe?
Okay, so this is the nut that goes there. This is the tool for said nut. These are the caps that are part of this universal joint. They go there. These are the spring clips that I cut off a while back. These are for my steering rack boot ends, the small ends, and these are the bushings for the steering rack where it bolts to the bulkhead of the car. We're gonna do these and these today. This has got to go on there like that.
Now these caps are tiny and they're made out of very thin metal, not like a universal joint on, like, say, a full-size pickup truck. These things are thin and I need to push exactly on the shoulder where it's strongest. But first I've got to put my MacGyver hat on to try and figure out a way to support this thing. You remember MacGyver, the guy from the 80s that could single-handedly, with a toothbrush, a pack of certs, and a propane torch, send something like a Tesla to outer space. So given the odd shape of this thing, I gotta do some MacGyvering. After a few tries, I just found that taping the socket to the cap really helped because I only have two hands and I needed to hold so many things. It worked pretty good, actually. Now, this would have been a lot easier if this little cap didn't have this very annoying high spot in the middle of the cap. This cross piece, which is the only thing I saved to the original, has to be inserted at the exact right moment. I'm sure some of you are thinking, why didn't I just buy a new universal joint? Why would I go through the time and effort to repair this thing? Well, this damn thing is well over 500 British pounds. Yeah, it's really expensive. And the parts to repair it, about 140, 150 Canadian. Enough said, right? Which way did it go? I don't remember. I better look it up. This other side of the yoke is just a teeny weeny bit different. It needs an extra little spacer.
I've never been so nervous in my life. You know, it might be the heat because it's like 35 degrees Celsius out today. It's a late August day or mid-August, and it is just a scorcher, and the humidity is at 94%, and yes, we are dying here, but I'm trying to keep moving. Anyways, I am done pushing the caps in, and now I just have to push these little star locking pieces in. And so there's my caps over there. Here's my star retainers, whatever you want to call them. I've got to push on there like that to try and pop them in. You can see, if you look closely, let me get that lined up right there. There is, let me turn the light on here, maybe we can see it a bit better. You can see that inside there are the marks from the old ones. So, I got to get them in.
This wasn't a very elegant process. Took a little bit of tappy, and then it took a little bit of pushy, and then finally I managed to get it in. I'm sure whoever made these for Ferrari had a nice tooling process, but I don't.
I'm done. Let's be perfectly honest, I was shitting my pants the whole way through this because I only ordered 4 and 4. I had no spares. So I took my time, and I mean I took a lot of time on this. I probably spent 4 hours. And that's just to push these little caps in and make sure everything's lined up perfectly and get all these little spring clips in. I don't think that tools exist for it. It's definitely done by the CD for Pants, and it feels about 1,000 times better. I'm fairly confident now that I can say I have properly fixed this unit. Now I have to figure out the phasing and start putting everything back together. Let's keep moving.
But to me, keeping moving on sometimes means setting something aside and doing something else. so that I'm not so focused on a single task. First up is the steering rack.
Wow, big difference in tension on these. Look at that.
These are the racked bulkhead bushings. Probably the easiest bushings to date that I've replaced on this car. I think the elapsed time was 10 minutes here. I'm about ready to start reassembling stuff, and I gotta clean this housing, but I got no clue how to do it. I'm really fumbling around here. Nothing I threw at this thing was actually making a dent in the dirt, until I took my Dremel and really kicked its butt. I've got a very soft, bristly brush in the Dremel, and it just seems to be getting in everywhere it needs to get. And I'm actually quite satisfied with the results.
Alright, so we're going to take a look at this. This is the horn contact, as well as part of the cancel cam for the turn signals. This here goes up through the adapter, which is right here. This adapter. And it goes into the steering wheel button, which I don't have. Now, most of these circuits from this generation worked on the premise of the circuit is downstream. This is actually supplying 12 volts, and then the horn button just grounds the circuit, and that would mean when you push the horn button, that would touch theoretically ground. I'm assuming it works the same way. I'll look at the wiring diagram, but I have to take this off and make that more permanent, and I have to lengthen it. But I thought I'd show you how the cancel cam works. It's kind of unique, yet been done there before. So when I turn the signal to the left, you see that little guy right there engaging. But when that part of the cancel cam goes past it, it just flicks past it. So if I went around, flicks past it, but once I come back, it's going to flick it off. Watch the arm. Okay, same thing with this way. It's gonna kind of flick past it, come back. Pretty ingenious, actually. So this looks like an 18 or a 20 gauge wire to me. Let's take this here. Should be the same gauge. It's 20 gauge wire. I don't believe this is the factory way of doing it, but I would imagine there was some sort of contact there before. You know what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go look at the circuit, because I kind of think that, I don't know if this has a relay in it or not. This is the same wire that I took off, but that doesn't mean it doesn't need to be corrected. So I'm going to go look at the circuit on wiring diagram, and I'll be back at you.
The reason I've gone to look at the circuit is because the wire that I'm looking at that I took off, it just feels like it's too thin. It's not original, and I don't think it's right.
Alright, so I have looked at the wiring diagram, and I do see it has a relay, but this 20 gauge wire that was in there still doesn't feel correct. I think it's too thin. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to find the wire on the other side, connecting my multimeter right here, and go select. Okay, I'm on continuity. I'm going to figure out which wire is over here. Second from last. Okay, so looking at this wire over here, that's my connection right there. So that means that point right there is connected to right there. Alright, now looking at that wire right there, and looking at that wire, that's definitely not the right gauge wire that they had in there. So we're going to scrap this idea of this wire, and that looks to be closer to probably a 16 or a 14 gauge wire in there. It's definitely not one of the heavy load ones. As you can see, those are much thicker over there, but Yeah, let's do it right. If we're gonna do it, we're gonna just do it a little closer to right anyways. Okay, so let's get a thicker wire. This is definitely a thicker gauge. If you can look at them and see the difference. Alright, this is a 20 gauge, this is a 16 gauge. And while this looks to be pretty close to that now, I think they probably went with a lighter wire because it was probably easier to get in here. I'm sure that there was probably a rivet here at some point with some sort of wiring, if I had to guess. I'm sure it didn't come from Ferrari like this, but... So technically you're supposed to let the whole thing warm up and then touch it after, but I'm trying to cheat a bit because I don't want to melt the plastic. And no, I wouldn't normally solder like this. But before somebody tells me that I'm doing it wrong, I already know that. Sometimes Mickey Mouse requires Mickey Mouse. Now we're just going to double check our continuity. Look at that, okay. There, I got it. Okay, so let's find the neutral position. So the neutral position is going to be with this up, obviously. That goes like that. That goes like that. So neutral is going to be there. There's up. And if we look at our unit right here, we see that that wire is going to go through there. Okay. That's going to come through there. That's going to line with that keyway there. And then I would imagine that that is going to go into there. If I had to guess about how this is all going to line up. And yes, it does. Once again, trying to do this with the camera in front of me. Well, I'm not sure what is killing me more, the heat or this steering column. And I've just discovered another problem. You see this nut right here? I was trying to figure out why this nut is so hacked up and why everything was loose. Bought a new nut. And guess what? Nothing tightens up on this thing. This nut goes down a little ways and then stops. This nut goes down a little ways. So I've had to backtrack my way back out again. And I need to straighten some threads on the steering shaft, the steering wheel shaft. Unfortunately, I don't have a die to repair the threads on site, but I do have the old nut. Old mechanic's trick, actually Terry taught me this one, is you can use an old nut and you can cut some grooves in it like I am right here. What I've created is just the most rudimentary die, but it will do the job. I bet you it will. Let's find out. Time to see if it worked. We're going to use the new nut. And yes, I believe it has worked. Alright, so when I was trying before, and I had a very tight tolerance there, I damaged that wire, so I'm going to redo that wire. Do me a favor. Can you crank this while I hold?
You know, even though it's just a thing, it actually drives pretty good.
Yeah. Got that Mustang? Hang on.
I think around the circle.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Okay. Terry tight.
Oh, that's tight there.
Okay. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, you have to buy a special socket for that.
I did. After reading lots of complaints online and talking to number 27 fellow Jack, I decided to put this adapter on.
The common complaint is that if you're a tall person, I'm 6'2", I guess I qualify, is that the steering wheel in stock position just feels a little uncomfortable. This 50mm adapter just pushes it out a little further, makes it a bit more comfortable. And of course, every time I look at the steering wheel, I see that big scratch on it. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do about that yet. I don't know. Suggestions? Anyone? Anyone? Lastly, but certainly not least, is to get the phasing of these two joints correct. Looking at some factory diagrams, I believe I've got it. And I think I'm pretty much done. Let's take a look at the whole thing. Steering, check mark. Now let's go back to the car next week and clean it up and start putting stuff back on. Thanks for watching. See you in part 24.